So I am here again with Chapter 3 Economic Survey, and I'm recording it on 26th of February, Thursday in the afternoon, and hopefully it should reach you by tomorrow evening. So we will begin with this topic on monetary management and financial intermediation. Mainly for you, it will be important from prelims point of view, but for people with economics optional or economic services exam, the factuals given in it will be very important even otherwise. For GS people, the discussion on regional rural banks, the discussion on steps taken by SEBI to improve things in India will also be very important from mains point of view also. All right. So coming back, in introduction, the economic survey says that RBI monetary management involves regulating money supply, interest rates, and liquidity. And what is the purpose? To ensure price stability, that sustain growth with stable price through money supply, interest rate, and liquidity. And it is important that whatever changes RBI does, banks pass on those changes to people for efficient allocation of resources. And of course, with globalization, the financial costs had come down, but with deglobalization, again, the financial costs are rising. So that is what survey begins with. Then they begin with global financial markets, and they say that the tariff announcements by US has resulted in huge uncertainty. So we see many people shifting away from US dollar to gold, and there has been a dip in global equities and a spike in risk premia. Risk premia means more money taken to cover for the risk that may arise in future. All this was after the Liberation Day tariff announced by Donald Trump. But then, of course, now then survey gives a very good reason, keep it in mind, that prolonged uncertainty impacts finance through three channels. Delayed investment, जितना uncertain होगा लोग investment को delay करेंगे, so capital formation will be delayed. Your production capacity will not grow very easily. Higher credit spreads, which means what? Depositors will get less interest and borrowers will have to pay larger interest. Banks will keep a larger spread between the two because the banks will be worried about losing money. And number three, asset prices will correct very quickly due to risk contagion. The equity prices will fall, the bond prices will fall because of the risk affecting all countries in a globalized world. And they said then IMF is noting that there are new vulnerabilities like AI models. So what do the AI models do? They create more herd behavior. Why? Because most of the AI models are trained in the same manner, and that means that whatever prediction they will do will be in the same composition and everybody will take the same reaction. यहाँ पे ह्यूमन एलिमेंट कम हो गया, एआई का एलिमेंट बढ़ गया, तो जो एआई डिसीजंस लेंगे ज़्यादा और सब चूंकि सिमिलर मॉडल पे ट्रेंड हैं तो एक जैसे ही डिसीजन मेकिंग करेंगे और सबकी रिस्क एक जैसी कंज्यूरिंग होगी, एंड दैट विल रिजल्ट इन अ लॉट ऑफ वॉलेटिलिटी इन द मार्केट. Also, another reason for new volatility is that larger than proportionate increase in AI related stocks. 75% of share price rise in US is because of AI related stocks. And then another risk is elevated global debt. The global debt to GDP ratio is now almost touching 100%, which is a worrying sign. And another is rapid growth of cryptocurrencies like stable coins, which heightens the risk. That challenge in one currency can then flip over into another. The important kya hai? The survey is suggesting there are new vulnerabilities. One, AI model based prediction. Two, heavy investment in AI based sector. Three, global debt being rising. And fourth, new generation coins, stable coins, crypto and all, which is resulting in possibility of markets interfering with each other. Then, so survey says that if you take a study of 811 registered firms from 2010 to 24, and they say that the firms which are mid-sized firms are more vulnerable to uncertainty, while large and small firms are less vulnerable. Why? Large firms have enough money and small firms don't have to bother because they are less dependent on capital. Another is that between 10 and 24, most shocks were global in nature. Like the Russia-Ukraine war or the European crisis or the subprime crisis and so on. So the firms which were in export sector reduced their capital formation more than firms which were domestically dependent. And third, that the traditional and medium technology sectors as well as the service sector displayed continued capital formation. Why? They were less dependent on foreign market, they were less dependent on new type of technology, so they could do things much better compared to the high-tech manufacturing firms and all, which had more uncertainty to face. All right. So the moral of the story is reduce uncertainty to make sure that private capital expenditure can be revived and expanded. Then they talk about India's monetary policy balances, price stability, financial stability, and inclusive growth. All right, so India's monetary policy will be focusing on keeping inflation stable, financial system stable, and growth inclusive. And they said that with easing inflation, now the RBI has reduced repo rate by to 5.25% up to 100 basis points, and have shifted to neutral stance, which means that looking at the world in future, they will decide whether to increase money supply or reduce money supply further. And then of course CRR has been reduced. अब ये क्या है, इनको आप पढ़ सकते हैं as steps by RBI to increase liquidity. You know, steps by RBI to increase liquidity. So 1, repo rate cut, 2, CRR cut, 3, 2.5 lakh crore open market operation in the bank, you know, so that is another factor. So these are steps taken by RBI to increase liquidity. Then the survey says that liquidity condition is very evened up. We have good enough money, and there is a fourth thing here: 5 billion forex swaps in November. Forex swap का मतलब क्या है? That RBI ने आज डॉलर दे दिया, बदले में रूपी दे दिया, बदले में डॉलर लिए, और फ्यूचर में डॉलर देकर रूपी लेंगे. So that is forex swap. So रूपी दे दिए मतलब increased supply of rupee. Taking dollar today, giving rupee today, and in future they will take rupee, give dollar. So today rupee supply has become higher. So we see that the net liquidity adjustment facility remains in surplus in the fiscal year 26 up to January 26. There was a slight period in December when it was in deficit, but that was because tax payments were happening a lot in December and stock market clearances were happening. But then generally it has come back into surplus. And this makes sure that the overall interest rate in India remains low so that investments can be encouraged. अब फाइनेंशियल इंटरमीडिएशन क्या है? तो जो बैंक्स हैं वो फाइनेंशियल इंटरमीडियरीज हैं जो आरबीआई के चेंजेस को पहुंचाते हैं लोगों तक. तो कौन कौन लोग हैं ये काम करने वाले? बैंक्स, नॉन बैंकिंग फाइनेंशियल कंपनीज, माइक्रो फाइनेंसिंग इंस्टीट्यूशंस, कैपिटल मार्केट्स एंड फाइनेंशियल टेक्नोलॉजी platforms. All right, so just keep it in mind from Prelims point of view that which all institutions can be used for transmitting the monetary policy changes done by RBI to the market. So these are the monetary policy institutions. Then they talk about performance of banking sector, which is very important, both prelims and mains point of view, that the scheduled commercial banks remain strong. The average capital to risk weighted asset ratio is at 17.2%, and the gross NPA and net NPA is now at a multi-year low. If you see 2.2% of total loan extended and 0.5% of the total loan extended. In 18 they had reached 11.2 and 6%. Here things looked very tragic. Thankfully India has resolved it, and we are now in a place where twin balance sheet deficit has been resolved. Corporates are less leveraged now, so we see the pickup in private investment also, and we see the pickup in bank lending also. That's good news for Indian system. Then of course the recovery rates in NPAs have doubled. In fiscal year 18 the recovery rate was 13.2%, now 26.2%, and the slippage ratio मतलब कि जितना लोन दिए उनमें से कितना NPA बन रहा है. So that slippage ratio has come within 1.3-1.4%, which is again something which is under control. So overall we see that bank credit is going okay, and we see that overall the economy looks healthy with respect to the banking system point of view. Another thing from prelims point of view, remember, personal loan grew fastest because of the gold loans that came in, and increasing prices of gold made the collateral easy. MSME credit remained fast enough with 21.8% growth rate recorded, and the micro and small enterprises in fact recorded 24.6%. Why would this happen? So again ये है reasons for MSME loan growth. कि MSME क्रेडिट क्यों बढ़ा? एक रेगुलेटरी ईजिंग, regulatory easing on voluntary pledge of gold and silver as collateral. So easy regulation, you could give gold and silver as collateral, take easy loans, made MSME get easier loans. Government gave more credit guarantee under the credit guarantee, transfers and for small and medium micro and small enterprises. So more credit guarantees were given. MSME classification was revised in last year's budget. So now there are larger firms qualifying as medium enterprises and they take more loans from the market, and there have been credit cards introduced for MSME. So overall we see that credit growth for commercial sector has been very healthy, which is good news for the economy because it suggests that in future we are seeing some high investment. Also, another good news is that gradually people are shifting from banks to non-bank. Like if you see, the non-bank credit was 5.9 lakh crore, and bank credit were non-bank sources were 7.7 lakh crore sources. This has now gone up to 20.3 lakh crore and 10.6 lakh crore, suggesting that non-bank sources, what are non-bank sources? Like bonds being issued, foreign direct investments coming into India, shares being issued, are also being used by companies, especially large companies are now raising most of their money by issuing bonds or from the share market. So that means the small companies can raise money from the banks and the large companies can raise money from the market. So the cost of borrowing remains low because the banks face less pressure on of too much demand of credit. As I told you, large firms are relying on market-based funding and small firms for bank credit. All right, so the bank balance sheet is strong, non-bank intermediation is strong, funding sources have diversified. So that way, India's investment prospects in the money market or monetary market looks good according to survey, and I would agree to that. Regional rural banks, they've put a section on it. This is important for everyone, as I told you, for optional people, for GS people, and for economic services people. That, first of all, they are primary financial intermediaries in rural and semi-rural areas. And to strengthen them, the government has consolidated them. And now we have 28 RRBs alongside IT integration, core banking solutions. So the performance has now improved. Consolidated net profit is at the highest ever seen, 7.6 thousand crore and 6.8 thousand crore. GNPA ratio has improved to 5.4%, lowest in 13 years. Credit deposit ratio has risen to 73.8%. Credit deposit ratio is कितना लोन दिए अपने डिपॉजिट में से, डिपॉजिट आइडल नहीं है, ज्यादा से ज्यादा लोन दिया जा रहा है ताकि उससे पैसे कमाए जा सके, giving more loan to earn money out of that. And then the capital adequacy ratio is 14.4%, and priority sector lending has consistently gone beyond 75% of the targeted amount. These are all achievements of regional rural banks. Please keep it in mind. If you are writing an answer or revival of RRBs, you can use this easily. Then of course, this is the performance chart about which we discussed. You can use that. Then some major policy actions in banking sector by RBI. पहला, ट्रांसपेरेंट रेगुलेशन. उन्होंने एक फ्रेमवर्क ऑफ फॉर्मुलेशन ऑफ रेगुलेशन लाए ताकि इम्पैक्ट एनालिसिस, कंसल्टेशन, ये सब ट्रांसपेरेंटली हो सके. देन रेगुलेटरी कंसोलिडेशन. 9,000 सर्कुलर जो आरबीआई के ऑर्डर्स पहले आते थे उनको अब 2038 मास्टर डायरेक्शंस में कन्वर्ट कर दिया. तो ऑब्सोलीट इंस्ट्रक्शंस, अननेसेसरी कंप्लायंस बर्डन, this is removed. So more freedom to banks, more freedom to financial institutions to do business in India. Then review mechanism lie that every 5-7 years we will do regulatory review so that outdated regulations can be removed. And digital MSME credit has been launched by the public sector banks, so that credit assessment model can be done for MSMEs, integrating the credit guarantee trust for micro and small enterprises guarantees. तो जो गारंटी दिए जाते हैं स्मॉल फर्म्स को वो अब कंप्यूटर से दे दिए जाए, एआई की हेल्प ले ली जाए, सॉफ्टवेयर की हेल्प ले ली जाए, so that the manual decision making can be reduced, more efficiency, less corruption chances, and that is again something that RBI has introduced. All right, and responsible AI use, that is making sure that there is free AI framework to promote innovation but prudent risk management. So please keep this in mind. These are the policy actions in banking sector by RBI: transparent regulation, regulatory consolidation, regulatory review mechanism, digital MSME credit, and responsible AI use. देन एआई ये इंपॉर्टेंट है, अगर बाई चांस आपसे कोई सवाल पूछ लिए मेंस में दैट व्हाट आर द स्टेप्स टेकन बाय गवर्नमेंट और आरबीआई टू प्रमोट इंडियन बैंकिंग, दिस इज समथिंग दैट यू कैन राइट. Then AI in financial services में global trend ये रहा है that the European central banks have been using it for inflation forecasting and risk detection, US Federal Reserve for research coding and all, Bank of Canada for macro forecasting, Bank of England for machine learning. In India, we have not used it much, but the global economy says that we can have safe AI deployment provided we can make sure it is transparently done. So RBI has now introduced a free AI framework under which in Indian finance it is still nascent. Only 21% of the institutions surveyed by RBI are using AI, mostly large banks, and it is not yet introduced for assessment of loans and all. It is mainly for customer interaction, bot chatting, and so on. Also, to make sure there is safeguards also, the RBI has introduced a framework to make sure that personal data is protected and people are given more importance, innovation is done better, there is more equity of understanding and so on. So innovation promotion and risk mitigation, this will be the major factor for India's AI framework. इसको important दिमाग में रखोगे with respect to what has been government step to promote AI in Indian banking. All right, government step. So this slide becomes your answer to that. And major factor is we are going for efficiency, we are going for risk mitigation, better quality lending without compromising data protection, without compromising privacy, and without compromising equity. All right, this is the basic framework on this slide, but please keep it in mind. Then of course the survey talks about microfinancing. Microfinancing का मतलब क्या हुआ? छोटे लोन देना, small institutions targeting small population so that small loans etc can be given. That is the idea behind microfinancing. So again RBI says that India's microfinance sector plays a crucial role in grassroots development, serving predominantly women and rural borrowers. That means it is going for inclusive growth. तो अगर तुम financial inclusion पे कुछ लिख रहे हो, if you're writing some answer on financial inclusion, microfinance talk can be a very good, and if you can give these data points, जो मैंने आपको notes लिखवाए हैं financial inclusion में, वहाँ ये data point add कर लो. In financial inclusion, क्या data point? That as of March 2025, non-banking financial companies based microfinance institutions are holding 39% loan outstanding, followed by banks and small finance banks, and they are operating over 685 districts. Also, the active borrowers have risen from 330 lakh to 627 lakh, which itself shows, and then the gross loan from 2.3 lakh crore to 33 lakh crore. It's not 33k, 33 lakh crore. So this is something you can bring as data points to show that how microfinancing is growing in India. However, in 25 we have seen some decline because post-COVID pandemic there was a huge surge. Now some correction is happening. Also, RBI has made sure there are regulatory interventions to control risky asset disbursement. All right. Still, the income assessment of households is still weak. We can use AI over here. Borrower's total indebtedness is not seen, so one borrower can borrow from 10 different institutions and maybe default one day and we can be in trouble. So that is also not very visible for our microfinancing institutions. And also, we don't have proper competition in the sector the way we should have it. So overall, these are some challenges of microfinancing, but if we can improve on these, it can be a very good way in improving self-help groups, farmers, crop diversification, micro enterprise funding. All that in India can be done by this method. और इसके अंदर गवर्नमेंट ने कुछ एस्पेक्ट्स जो सर्वे हाईलाइट करता है, that government is putting some commercial capital to create more scale, technology adoption in the microfinance sector so that low income and rural borrowers can be integrated, especially women in that, to the formal credit system. However, there are problems like overlending, borrower over indebtedness, and rising NPAs. So you can't grow infinitely. Also, you should not grow unnecessarily. लोन देने के नाम पे जब हम लोन देते हैं, okay, let's have quantity based targets and let's keep giving more loan, then chances that defaults will happen on those loans become even further higher up. So we should be very careful that while giving loans, we should not be too much over enthusiastic. We should do risk assessment, proper borrowers total indebtedness coverage, use good software to internalize data points, and then improve microfinancing. So microfinancing will be a good answer only when we can control defaults, when we can make sure funds are used for better purposes. This is something that they are saying here. ऑल राइट, इम्पैक्ट वॉशिंग एक टर्म सर्वे ने यूज किया. इसका मतलब है ऑन पेपर दिखाना दैट बहुत वेलफेयर हो रहा है, बट इन रियलिटी दैट वेलफेयर इज नॉट एक्चुअली happening. So excessive rewarding to particular sectors like women oriented enterprises or scheduled caste enterprises, but that excessive reward is not resulting in actual upgradation of the target group, then you are doing impact washing. All right, so that survey says one should be careful about not doing. तो सर्वे कहते हैं दैट शिफ्ट कीजिए टुवर्ड्स वेलफेयर लिंक्ड इंडिकेटर्स. जैसे अब समझिएगा कैसे सुधार सकते हैं इसे, हाउ टू इंप्रूव दिस सिचुएशन. शिफ्ट टुवर्ड्स नेट असेट अक्यूमुलेशन, डू दैट नेट असेट अक्यूमुलेशन की तरफ शिफ्ट कीजिए कि लोगों ने असेट कितना अक्यूमुलेट किया. कैश फ्लो स्टेबिलिटी, जिन्होंने लोन लिया क्या उनके पास रेगुलर कैश आ रहा है, क्या वो रेगुलरली क्रेडिट पा रहे हैं, क्या वो उसे लगा रहे हैं अपने बिजनेस में, एंड कैन दे यूज दैट मनी टू अर्न बेटर प्रॉफिट इन future. Similarly, savings growth, that is my loan resulting in encouraging people to save more, and is it resulting in reducing reliance on informal credit, and is it reducing debt to income ratio and distress borrowing. ये welfare oriented हुए. So cash flow stability 2, savings growth 3, reduced reliance on informal credit 4, debt to income ratio being reduced 5, distressed borrowing reduced 6. So these are long term financial resilience. अगर ये 6 चीजें हो रही हैं, we are doing things much better. Then of course they say that it is not systemically linked to valuation calculus of investors, so maybe the investors may not be willing to finance such things, and that is where sometimes the microfinance institutions might have trouble in expansion. But that is where the role of government comes in, and they must take steps to make sure that there is impact assessment on the basis of actual welfare and not simply on the basis of more loans given in the market. And this is sustaining inclusion requires shifting from scale based metrics to welfare oriented outcomes. मतलब क्या हुआ, ज़्यादा लोन देने के चक्कर में मत रहिए, shift from scale based metrics to welfare oriented आउटकम्स, ताकि लॉन्ग टर्म रेजिलियंस दिखे इकोनॉमी में. तो ये आप अपने इंटरव्यू में भी यूज कर सकते हैं अबाउट द रोल इन थ्रू विच एमएफआई कैन बी इम्प्रूव्ड. देन दे से फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन, एंड इन फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन दे से इट हैज अचीव्ड विद एडल्ट बैंक अकाउंट ओनरशिप rising from 35% to 89% in 2021 with narrowed gender and income gaps. Of course, PM Jan Dhan Yojana has played a very big amount. 55.02 crore accounts are now opened with 36.63 crore in rural, semi-rural areas. Stand Up India scheme where 10 lakh to 1 crore rupee loan is given to SC, ST and women entrepreneurs for new enterprises. Greenfield means new. PM Swanidhi scheme where collateral free loans are given to street vendors, and PM Mudra Yojana credit support for micro and small enterprises across sectors. So these are the key initiatives being taken up. And when we say progress in financial inclusion, so RBI's financial inclusion index is tracking 97 indicators across banking, insurance, investment and pension sector. अगर आपको याद हो, मैंने पिछली बार जब इकोनॉमिक सर्वे डिस्कस किया था तो वहाँ पर भी आपसे बैंकिंग इंक्लूजन इंडेक्स की बात की थी. तो वहाँ आप देख सकते हैं कि इसके कंपोनेंट्स क्या क्या हैं बैंकिंग इंक्लूजन इंडेक्स के. पिछले इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में हम बात कर चुके हैं उसका, दैट इट इज ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ अडेप्टेबिलिटी, अवेलेबिलिटी, एक्सेसिबिलिटी, एंड द वेटेजेस अटैच्ड. सो द कंपोजिट इंडेक्स हैज रिजन फ्रॉम 64 to 67. And we have some good empirical evidence on PM Mudra Yojana. Say for example, 36.18 lakh crore rupees has now been disbursed over 55 crore accounts till October 25. And over 10 crore first time borrowers are there. Then share of smallest loans declined from 92% to 63%. शिशु loans. क्यों? क्योंकि अब लोग अपग्रेड कर रहे हैं खुद को, शिशु से किशोर, तरुण इसकी तरफ जा रहे हैं. And 69% loans are going to women and substantially to SC, ST, OBC, and the NPA ratio is only 3.31%, which is a very good news. So this is a दिस इज अगेन द एम्पेरिकल एविडेंस, जो मैंने तुम्हें मुद्रा योजना पे लिखवाया है उन नोट्स को अपग्रेड कर लेना इन डेटा पॉइंट्स के साथ, जस्ट ऐड देम ओवर देयर एंड द नोट्स विल बी अपग्रेडेड. In PM Swanidhi, again they are giving us the impact survey, and they say borrowers are progressing very quickly. Income are rising 20% between 23 to 25. Lot of repeat borrowers, which means money is coming back very nicely. Asset investment is yielding higher income gains of 33%. Welfare spillovers at household level. So housing upgrades have happened. Food access has improved. Healthcare education has improved. So in real sense, achieving inclusion. Digital payment usage has increased now to 83% among PM Swanidhi borrowers, and 66% borrowers expressed that they will take further loans, which shows again that growth has been tremendous. NPA rate is below 10%, which is again quite a welcome thing, which means that even street vendor loans are giving us some good result. So they say that if there is credit access, that is what the result, credit access and repayment discipline, then there is enterprise growth, rising credit demand, and further growth in the economy. Of course, this digital public infrastructure and regulatory innovation is another factor which is allowing financial inclusion. And then there is an account aggregator framework which is based on the unified payment interface transaction trails. So in that case, again, financial deepening is happening because active usage leads to real inclusion. Interoperable digital payments होते हैं, आप गूगल पे से फोन पे पैसा भेज सकते हैं. एंड यूपीआई इनेबल्ड डेटा अलाउज बैंक्स एंड फिनटेक्स टू एक्सपैंड लेंडिंग, क्योंकि मान लीजिए मैं एक बैंक हूँ, कोई स्ट्रीट वेंडर है, उनका अकाउंट मेरे पास है और वो यूपीआई से पैसे लेते हैं अपने कस्टमर से, तो मेरे पास ऑलरेडी रिकॉर्ड है कि वो कितने पैसे कमाते हैं. एज अ बैंक आई ऑलरेडी हैव द रिकॉर्ड ऑफ व्हाट मनी दे अर्न एंड आई डोंट नीड फर्दर क्रेडिट research, and that allows me to give easier credit without raising the default rates. So we see that overall survey says that governments, PM Swanidhi, PM Mudra Yojana, and so on, those kind of schemes have given a lot of possibilities. Then digital public infrastructure has resulted in it. Account aggregator framework has resulted in it. Because of UPI, there has been financial deepening. They also say that that UPI adoption is linked to higher economic output and diversified everyday usage. There's business to business payment, e-way bills payment, normal support payment, and so on. Also, UPI complements rather than replaces cash, because the cash composition has not disappeared. We still have around 65% usage of cash by UPI holders also. Also, public interoperable infrastructure can drive large-scale financial deepening because this is publicly owned and this is interoperable. So that means more and more people have been hitching the bandwagon. We are having billions of transactions through UPI, and even poorer section of society now uses it. So, and that leads to less wastage. It also leads to less loss due to theft, etc., because digital money cannot be stolen so easily. Then of course we have to be conscious about cyber frauds, which survey doesn't mention, but I'm telling you that cyber frauds we have to be conscious about, and people having the right count of their money so that confusions don't happen, we have to remain conscious about. Then they give us a page on performance of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, and they say that in this, again, you can upgrade your notes using this this suggestion there, and they say that due to IBA, since our NPAs have gone down, the Standard & Poor has given us a credit rating upgrade, and recovery rates have improved from 15% in the pre-IBC era. In fact, it was not even 15-20%. It was 12% in the pre-IBC era to around 30% in the post-IBC era, while the average resolution timelines have reduced from 8 years to 2 years. 57% of closed CIRP cases, that is जो कॉर्पोरेट इंसॉल्वेंसी रिजोल्यूशन प्रोफेशनल ने क्लोज किए केसेस, उनमें से 57 केसेस लिए, उनमें से 57% क्लोज हुए, उनमें नेगोशिएशन हो गया. 43% को लिक्विडेशन के लिए जाना पड़ा बिकॉज द बोरोवर डिड नॉट अग्री टू पे बैक ऑन द टर्म्स एंड कंडीशन. So this resolution to liquidation ratio is improving very nicely. And remember, I've told you in the class also that liquidation is the last resort. If you resolve, that is better because jobs etc. remain preserved that way. In 1300 resolved cases, creditors have realized 94% of fair value and 170% of liquidation value. So wherever cases have been resolved, much better money has been recovered. Also, we see that overdue corporate loan ratios fell from 18% to 9%. Cost of debt declined. Why? Because now, even if a firm is distressed, The lenders know that through IBA they can recover their money, so the cost of debt to even distressed firms goes down because of better possibility of recovery. Corporate governance has improved with more independent directors in the firms with IBA, and banks net NPA has gone down drastically. So that again is a factor which helps us in assuring that IBA has served these benefits. तो आप इनको ऐड कर सकते हैं अपने नोट्स में जो आपने ऑलरेडी लिख रखा है एज अपग्रेडेशन. बट कुछ चैलेंजेस अभी भी हैं, ये तो हमने क्लास में भी डिस्कस किया था, दैट टाइमलाइंस अभी भी एक्सीड हो रही हैं विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू क्लोजर. Judicial backlogs are huge, NCLT benches are less, and limited uptake of प्री-पैकेज्ड इंसॉल्वेंसी रिजोल्यूशन प्रोसेस. ये अपने नोट्स में ऐड कर लेना. ये नई चीज बताई हमें सर्वे ने, दैट ओनली 14 एडमिशंस हैव हैपेंड इन 4 years. सो द प्री-पैकेज्ड इंसॉल्वेंसी रिजोल्यूशन प्रोसेस फॉर MSME हैज नॉट वर्कड as good. You know, overall it is working well, but a lot of capacity expansion and faster education will be needed. On capital markets, it won't be very important for you, but you should just keep some basic things in mind, like from January till December, the share market gained around 10%. Also, globally, compared to global performance, India's performance has been subdued. In primary markets, there have been IPO issued, almost 10.7 lakh crore, and 53 lakh crore have been mobilized in the last 4 years. IPO volumes have been continuously rising in India, all from prelims point of view. Listings have increased in India. So that means primary markets are showing some high performance. ये important है exam point of view से. The small medium enterprises market expansion, the listings have increased to 217. अब 217 small medium enterprise हैं जो share market में listed हैं. 9,635 crore has been raised in fiscal year 26 alone, only till December 25. And 1380 companies listed on SME platforms of NSE and BSE. तो ये तुम ऐड कर सकते हो on performance of SME in India अपने नोट्स में. MSME का जो नोट्स है वहाँ ऐड कर लेना on performance of SME in India with respect to their financialization, that more and more SME are now joining the financial sector. Then, SEBI has introduced the security market code to consolidate all securities law for mechanism for delivery of regulatory services. So rule making will be streamlined, adjudication will be streamlined, and executive action will be quicker. Also, regulatory governance structure, the board composition will now have 9 to 15 members, 3 permanent members. Independence will be given to the SEBI board, and accountability will be established with public electronic database of regulations and orders. So ये reform within SEBI है, that this is the reform within SEBI to improve things in India. Also, there will be statutory recognition of market infrastructure institutions, that is stock exchanges, clearing corporations, इनको statutory recognition दी जाएगी. SEBI इन्हें function delegate कर सकते हैं like intermediary registration, ताकि SEBI पे pressure कम रहे and there can be more decentralization of the process. And procedural safeguards will be kept so that forgery can be controlled. GS के लिए ये important नहीं है. जो लोग इकोनॉमिक सर्विसेज के लिए पढ़ते हो उनके लिए ये 2 स्लाइड्स इंपॉर्टेंट हैं एज टू चेंजेस ब्रॉट अबाउट इन कैपिटल मार्केट रेगुलेशन टू इम्प्रूव इट्स परफॉर्मेंस. चेंजेस ब्रॉट अबाउट इन कैपिटल मार्केट रेगुलेशन टू इम्प्रूव इट्स परफॉर्मेंस. या इंटरव्यू में अगर कोई अपेयर कर रहे हो, somebody in the interview who has a financial market background, this can be important. Then we see that the retail participation is rising tremendously in the capital market. 63% households are now aware of at least one security product. We see 235 new demat accounts have now been added, and total accounts are 21.6 crore, and unique investors are 12 crore. That means 12 crore are separate people. They can have multiple demat accounts, and 25% are women. Mutual fund has reached now 5.9 crore people. That shows increasing population inclusion in financial sector within India. And then financial savings in India has evolved with more and more money going towards equity, comparatively lesser in fixed deposit, but equity and mutual funds are getting more money. This is what the data points show, and total households wealth accretion in equities is now 53 lakh crore, but more funds in equity and less in fixed deposits. This point tells you that deposits in fiscal year 12 were 57.9% share, while shares and mutual funds were only 1.8%. Now deposits are 35%, and shares in mutual funds are 15%. ये आपके लिए important है from prelims point of view of changing composition of assets in India. Currency has increased in number, has decreased from 8.6 to 7.2. Insurance and pension funds have been relatively stable, 28.6 and 29.6. Deposits importance has become lesser, 46.3 to 39.6. Equity and investment funds have gone up by almost similar amount as deposit has gone down, 15.7 to 23. But debt securities is a missing link. Debt securities क्या है? Bonds. तो अभी भी इंडिया का हाउस होल्ड बॉन्ड में सेविंग नहीं करता. ये जरूरी है कि बॉन्ड में सेविंग हो, क्योंकि जब बॉन्ड में सेविंग होगी तो बेटर रिटर्न्स आएंगे और कंपनीज को भी बेटर रिटर्न मिलेगा. बट बॉन्ड सेविंग हैज बीन रिलेटिवली लेसर इन इंडिया. सो दिस स्लाइड विल गिव यू दैट इंफॉर्मेशन. Of course, we see that more and more domestic people are now participating in Indian market, and foreign investors are kind of counterbalanced by domestic investors. That's good news for India. Our over dependence on foreign investors for stabilizing our financial markets is now becoming relatively lesser, and domestic investors are also playing a bigger role. Also, there is one missing piece, debt market, जो मैंने आपको बताया. In India, it is only 16-17% of GDP. लेकिन अगर हम देखें यूएस में 40% है, चाइना में 36% है. सो इंडियन हाउस होल्ड्स हैव टेकन अप इक्विटीज क्वाइट अ बिट, बट आई थिंक इंडियन हाउस होल्ड नीड टू शिफ्ट टू डेट, क्योंकि देखिए बॉन्ड जो है वो आपको 8-9-10% का रिटर्न दे देता है और उस पर भी डिफॉल्ट बहुत कम होते हैं. Fixed deposit hardly gives a return of 5-6%. So if Indian households have to create financial security, grow rich at a faster pace, bond market development is very important. Survey says bond market development can happen with more credit rating agencies. It can happen with easier regulations for bonds, and it can happen by popularizing bonds in household, portfolio, by informing households about them. It can also happen if financial institutions reduce their holding of only government bond and hold some private bonds also, so that there can be more and more possibility of बॉन्ड मार्केट, सेकेंडरी मार्केट इन द बॉन्ड मार्केट. सेकेंडरी मार्केट मतलब क्या? मैं एक हाउस होल्ड हूँ, मैंने बॉन्ड खरीदा, तो मैं चाहूंगा कि इसको खरीदने वाला कोई और भी रहे. बट इन इंडिया दैट इज वेरी रेस्ट्रिक्टेड. आउट ऑफ टोटल बॉन्ड दैट हैव बीन इशूड इन इंडिया, 99% हैव बीन थ्रू प्राइवेट प्लेसमेंट रूट, नॉट थ्रू पब्लिक ऑफर. मतलब 99% केसेस में मैंने अपना बॉन्ड किसी को पहले से तय करके बेच दिया. इट इज प्री डिसाइडेड सेलिंग इट. It doesn't show a very robust bond market. So that is again something very important that India should focus on its बॉन्ड एंड म्यूनिसिपल बॉन्ड एंड डेट बॉन्ड मार्केट. जब मैं आपको बजट पढ़ाऊंगा वहां भी बताऊंगा सरकार ने इस बार स्टेप्स भी लिए हैं ताकि कैसे म्यूनिसिपल बॉन्ड मार्केट को भी बढ़ाया जा सके. अब कुछ चीजें जो सरकार ने की हैं, जैसे रिमूव प्रायर अप्रूवल रिक्वायरमेंट फॉर ब्रोकर्स ऑपरेटिंग इन गिफ्ट IFSC, enhance disclosure standards for related party transaction, and streamlined InvIT converters to converter norms. तो इसमें क्या होगा? जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इन्वेस्टमेंट ट्रस्ट में है पैसा, वो बॉन्ड के रूप में आसानी से इशू किया जा पाएगा, एंड यू कैन कलेक्ट बेटर मनी फ्रॉम दैट. Then there is market development and product deepening. That is, with respect to past risk and return verification agency, government has introduced, it is still under implementation, to help investors independently verify claim of advisors. कि कोई फाइनेंशियल एडवाइजर है जो कह रहे हैं यहाँ पैसा लगाओ बहुत मिलेगा, वहाँ पैसा लगाओ बहुत मिलेगा, तो इन्वेस्टर्स उसे इंडिपेंडेंटली वेरीफाई कर सकते हैं कि सही बात है या गलत बात है. साथ में इलेक्ट्रिसिटी डेरिवेटिव्स लॉन्च किए गए हैं टू इंश्योर हेजिंग फोकस. दैट मोर फोकस शुड बी ऑन प्रोटेक्शन अगेंस्ट फ्लक्चुएशन. सो दैट इज इलेक्ट्रिसिटी डेरिवेटिव्स विच विल हेल्प. ऑल्सो इन इक्विटी डेरिवेटिव्स, जो इक्विटी बेस्ड डेरिवेटिव मार्केट है, वहां अब फिक्स कर दिया गया दैट ट्यूसडे एंड थर्सडे विल बी द क्लियरिंग डेट. तो सब प्रिपेयर्ड होंगे दैट रैंडमली क्लियरेंस नहीं होगी. देयर विल बी 2 days ऑन विच क्लियरेंस विल हैपन. ऑल्सो रिवाइज्ड ओपन इंटरेस्ट एंड पोजिशन लिमिट calculations, so that they have upgraded it, actually increased it, so that people can take longer positions, people can take larger positions, participate better, but informed participation, not speculative participation. इसीलिए बजट में F&O पे इस बार टैक्स बढ़ा दिया गया. Then introduced intraday monitoring of index derivative position. Intraday monitoring, दिन भर में monitoring होती रहेगी, fluctuations को control किया जा पाएगा. So that way, even if a common person participates, then the risk becomes lesser. governance becomes better, markets will then reach larger number of people, and that can be another step in popularizing capital market among people of India. And then it is corporate debt market. So corporate debt, when we talk about it, the corporate debt market is very important, because if we want a developed India, as I was telling you earlier also, that if we want a developed India, we will have to make sure that corporate debt is in picture. All right, and corporate debt does better. All right. So when we talk about corporate debt market, a deep corporate bond market is essential for India's journey towards Viksit Bharat, as I was telling you. And this we are recording today, that is Friday, 27th February, and we will give you the video today. So hopefully it should start helping you, and we will give you the video for budget in the coming week, as well as the survey will continue. I'm trying my best to complete things by 15th February, but I'm also taking classes every day, at least two, plus I have other obligations. So because I saw that some of you sent me a message that, sir, we would like you to finish survey sooner, so I would also love to do that, but I'm occupied by many other things. But I will try finishing survey and budget by 15th of March, maybe a little more, and then I will also give you some extra inputs. नेक्स्ट IAS ऐप के ऊपर मैं डिस्कशन शुरू करूंगा, जो आप अभी के स्टूडेंट्स हैं उनके लिए, on certain current events that have been happening. Okay, coming back. So a deep corporate bond market is essential. Then why deep corporate bond market is essential? As I was telling you earlier, that there will be less burden on the banking system, and corporates can get long-term loans from the market. Now we have had some high growth in our corporate bond market, from 17.5 trillion rupees to 53.6 trillion rupees. इसको फैक्ट की तरह याद कर लो, कि अगर बॉन्ड मार्केट पे कुछ आंसर लिख रहे हो तो फैक्ट याद रहे. There are 9.9 trillion has been issued in fiscal year 25 only, and the market size stands at 15 to 16% of GDP. But then, as I told you yesterday, 99% of issuances are through private placements, which is not good news. We should have a secondary market. We should have more participants, initial public offers, and that will help in making the market solid. Then, of course, survey explains that what is the structural gap that persists. तो आप सोचिए, corporate bond market to GDP ratio in countries like South Korea is 79%. Even in China is 38%. We are still at 12 odd percent. Also, so this is one low share in GDP in India. India का structural challenge क्या है? Low share in GDP. Then also issuances are heavily skewed towards the AAA, AA rated bonds, which means that small firms, middle rated firms, something like a AA minus or B plus, don't get much of the market. Many people don't buy it. So large firms still get money, but the small firms don't. All right. So not equitably available. That's another problem. The third is secondary market turnover remains low. As I was just telling you, that in secondary market there is hardly any dealing. That means most people, most bonds held till maturity. Then institutional investors dominate participation but prefer government securities or equities rather than corporate bonds. So the possibility of corporate bonds getting a market is less. So small size of the market. These are the challenges of structural problems of corporate bonds in India. What are the constraints? First of all, regulatory overlaps. SEBI, RBI, MCA, सबके बीच में regulatory overlap होता है, तो वहाँ पे delays हो जाते हैं issuance में, permission में. Then restrictive investment mandates for institutional investors. We need to remove this. We need to make sure that investment mandate नहीं होने चाहिए. ये नहीं कि bond से पैसा यहीं लगेगा, वहीं लगेगा. I can spend my money earned from bond anywhere. Third is high transaction costs, because brokerage costs are high, permission charges are high, and taxes are imposed at the same rate as what they are on equities. So automatically then people for high returns think about equities rather than bonds. So that again becomes a challenge. Then weak secondary market liquidity, and then recovery delays under insolvency processes, because if it is a non-collateralized bond, then you are not getting the money very soon. So these become the challenges of or constraints on the bond market. Multiple regulators in restrictive mandates on investment, high transaction cost, weak secondary market liquidity, and recovery rates under insolvency process affects investors' confidence. अब कुछ रिफॉर्म एफर्ट्स किए हैं सरकार ने. पहला, request for quote platform by SEBI. So in that case, the retail access will become better and simplify the issuance norms. So issuance norms issue करना आसान होगा और small investors इसे खरीद पाएंगे मार्केट से. क्रेडिट रेटिंग की गवर्नेंस स्ट्रॉन्ग की गई है. सो क्रेडिट रेटिंग एजेंसीज लाइक क्राइसिल, इक्रा एंड मेनी अदर्स will be more trustworthy. Tri-party repo system and credit default swap guidelines by RBI have been established. So now bonds can be used as a tri-party repo. आप मेरा बॉन्ड लीजिए, मैं दूसरे का बॉन्ड भेज दूं आरबीआई को. साथ में डिफॉल्ट स्वैप्स किए जा सकते हैं. तो इससे क्या होगा? सेफ्टी ऑफ द इन्वेस्टर विल बी हायर. And promotion of InvITs and REITs for long-term capital mobilization. So infrastructure investment trust, real estate investment trusts, people can issue bonds using their real asset. Like say, suppose I'm a builder, I have a housing complex. I can use the bonds, giving that housing complex as a collateral, and issue a part of that complex as a collateral and issue bonds through real estate investment trust. And those bonds can be purchased by people. I'll make profit, share the profit with these people. So that way the bond market can expand. What is the way forward to move towards a 120 trillion rupee market by 2030? First, regulatory harmonization and single window process. Multiple regulators na ho. Second, expanding investor base, like creating possibility that long-term pension funds, insurance companies are encouraged to buy corporate bonds and do not rely only on government bonds. Third, encouraging mid-rated bond issuance, encouraging small companies, medium companies, companies with lesser ratings but still issuing bonds and getting their loans. Fourth, enhancing market making and unified trading platforms like a SEBI or an NSE kind of a platform for bonds where there is proper market making. People know that अच्छा यहाँ जाऊंगा तो bonds मिलेंगे, इन bonds पे ये return मिलेगा, तो अपने आप advisors आएंगे, अपने आप support supplier of information आएंगे. So that will make the market more robust. You see this mutual fund sahi hai campaign resulting in a lot of people investing in mutual fund. So something similar we need to do for the bond market. And similarly, strengthening insolvency resolution for faster recovery. That if we can make Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act better, it will mean people will not be worried about buying bonds that God knows whether I will be able to recover money or not. And it is important because small firms will be much better off if they get money from bond market rather than the banking system. Then survey gives a very nice idea कि इंडिया में capital cost high क्यों है, कि जो इंडिया के लॉन्ग टर्म इंटरेस्ट रेट हैं वो डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज के मुकाबले 4-5% ज्यादा क्यों रहते हैं? वाई इज कैपिटल कॉस्ट हाई इन इंडिया? वाई इंडियाज कॉस्ट्स आर हायर देन डेवलप्ड इकोनॉमीज कॉस्ट्स? एंड सर्वे कम्स विद अ वेरी नाइस idea. It says, see, whatever is the capital demanded is for majorly investment. And how is this investment financed? By domestic savings or foreign savings? But if your country has a large current account deficit, then the dependence on external capital becomes large. अगर मेरी कंट्री लगातार करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट में होगी तो मुझे कैपिटल अकाउंट पे इनफ्लो चाहिए, और वो कैपिटल अकाउंट ऑफ इनफ्लो क्या है? फॉरेन कैपिटल कमिंग इनटू माय कंट्री. बट फॉरेन कैपिटल कमिंग इन माय कंट्री विल डिमांड अ रिस्क प्रीमियम, कि भाई मैं आपके देश में पैसा लगा रहा हूँ, रिस्क के लिए भी पैसा अलग से मिलना चाहिए. एंड देयर डिमांड ऑफ रिस्क प्रीमियम इंक्रीजेस द इंटरेस्ट रेट एंड मेक्स कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल हायर. तो सर्वे ये कहते हैं दैट अगर आप करंट अकाउंट बैलेंस को इंप्रूव कर दें तो वो ट्वाइस एज इफेक्टिव है देन फाइनेंशियल मार्केट डीपनिंग. सो ऑफ कोर्स डू फाइनेंशियल मार्केट रिफॉर्म्स बट कंट्रोल योर करंट अकाउंट बैलेंस. हाउ विल यू कंट्रोल योर करंट अकाउंट बैलेंस? बाय मेकिंग योरसेल्फ मोर प्रोडक्टिव एंड बाय प्रमोटिंग एक्सपोर्ट्स. एक तो खुद को प्रोडक्टिव ज्यादा बनाइए, साथ में अपने एक्सपोर्ट्स प्रमोट करिए. इफ यू आर मोर प्रोडक्टिव, योर कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन विल बी लो and exports will rise, and if exports rise, the current account will become more in balance, and that will result in lessening the cost of capital. Also, if you are more productive, people will earn better, income levels will rise. As income levels will rise, savings will rise, so more supply of capital will come in and cost of capital will fall. That is what the survey suggests. So that is why they say that higher domestic savings is what we should focus on, which will come with labor productivity, corporate profitability, and more retained savings. And if they are weak, then you have high risk premium, currency depreciation expectations rising, etc. So, what should India focus on? India should be focusing on labor and firm level deregulation, logistics and infrastructure upgrades, R&D and technological capability building, integration into global value chains, sustained export growth. So what should we be focusing on? Productivity growth, efficiency, efficiency improvement, ease of doing business, and export promotion. If we can do that, we'll, again I repeat, then we will have better current account, exports बढ़ेंगे, तो फॉरेन में जो पैसा लाना पड़ रहा है फॉरेन से वो थोड़ा कम जरूरत पड़ेगी, रिस्क प्रीमियम कम होगा. अगर अपने देश की प्रोडक्टिविटी बढ़ाएंगे तो लोगों की इनकम बढ़ेगी, सेविंग्स कैपेसिटी बढ़ेगी, सप्लाई ऑफ कैपिटल बढ़ जाएगा. Okay, then FPI. FPI, from prelims point of view, just keep in mind that why we have seen such high level of FPI outflow from India. So first is underperformance of Indian equities. भारत के शेयर मार्केट ने उतना परफॉर्म नहीं किया अच्छा, ग्लोबल शेयर मार्केट बेटर परफॉर्म कर रहे थे, तो हमारे यहाँ से एफपीआई आउटफ्लो हुआ. सेकेंड इज lot of policy uncertainty, Trump's tariff, etc. India not able to sign a deal with USA very soon. Third is rupee depreciation. अब ये समझिएगा आप थोड़ा ध्यान से, मैं कुछ समझा रहा हूँ. I'm teaching something, listen to me carefully. What India did between 2023 and 24 is it kept rupee value almost fixed at 81, 82. So what that meant was that many people who used to hedge their expenditure against rupee fluctuation stopped hedging. तो आप देखेंगे क्या हुआ, India's foreign exchange reserves jumped from $600 billion to $700 billion, while we did not have current account surplus, we did not have huge capital inflows. Still the valuation भी gold की price उस जमाने में नहीं बढ़ रही थी, but still $600 billion to $700 billion पहुंच गया इंडिया का forex reserve. क्यों पहुंच गया? When people stopped hedging, a lot of hedge funds money started pouring into foreign exchange, and that meant foreign exchange reserves went up. हमें यही conscious हो जाना चाहिए था that this rise in foreign exchange reserves is a signal that there is more risk brewing up in the exchange market. We did not listen to that at that time. तो नतीजा क्या हुआ? When last year, 2024 November, when RBI governorship changed and the new governor started allowing rupee to depreciate, the market was not prepared for it. So the market overreacted. कह रहे रूपी डेप्रिशिएट कर गया, तो अब एक्सपेक्टेशन बन गया ये तो और करेगा, तो रियल एक्सचेंज रेट के हिसाब से लोग जानते थे कि रूपी तो 90 तक जा सकता है. सो पीपल वर वेरी वरीड अबाउट रूपी रीचिंग 90. रूपी वाज एट 83 odd, and that meant people started selling even more. That let's quickly get rid of it. So we had an RBI FPI outflow, creating currency depreciation and created by currency depreciation. And then you will see Trump's tariff by the time we reached around September 2025, we had reached this 90 rupees value, 89 rupees value. So ideally the FPI outflow should have stopped there, but by then the Trump's uncertainties and the war in Middle East and all brewing up, all that was something that played on FPI's mind, and then further we had this pressure of FPI flowing out. So if you ask me, in the longer run or even in the medium term, I don't think FPI will keep going out of India. I'm expecting this year to be a positive one for FPI inflow into India. तो लेकिन ये आपको इसलिए समझाया मैंने कि कभी कभी आरबीआई जब कुछ गलत पॉलिसी बना लेते हैं कि नहीं जी मैं रूपी को डिप्रिशिएट नहीं करने दूंगा, आई नॉट लेट रूपी गो डाउन, देन इट क्रिएट्स अननेसेसरी मार्केट टर्ब्यूलेंस बिकॉज द मार्केट स्टार्ट्स फैक्टरिंग इन योर डिसीजंस. जस्ट कीप दिस इन माइंड. Then of course US bond yields are today pretty elevated, and mind you the risk spread Indian bond yield और US bond yield के बीच में difference एक समय ऐसा आया था कि only 1.65% रह गया था, only 1.65%. So automatically US is a safer haven, people went to USA. By December 25 this difference is back to around 2.5%. So again we can expect that some money will come into India through the bond market because again there is a risk spread between India and US. Risk spread का मतलब क्या हुआ? Given the risk in India, given the risk in US, what is the return India is giving compared to USA's return? That is the risk spread. And then of course there is pressure on export oriented sectors because of the global deglobalization phase we are going through. This I already told you, India US 10-year debt dynamics, and this part. Now, of course, what we see is relaxation of FPI norms, and India-US trade discussions can help in bringing more FPI into India. Today, FPI assets in custody are 81.4 lakh crore, but that is mainly because with dollar depreciation, rupee depreciation, the valuation has gone up. And the FPI ownership in NSE equities has now shown a decline to 16.9%, which means that there is a continuous, consistent pulling out of FPI, which the reasons we discussed on the previous slide. The domestic institutional investors are putting in a lot of money, mutual funds and insurance companies, पर यहाँ हमें conscious रहना चाहिए कि कहीं LIC या SBI ऐसे कंपनीज सिर्फ मार्केट प्रेशर में या इनडायरेक्ट प्रेशर में आकर तो नहीं खरीद रहे इंडिया में शेयर्स, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली शेयर्स किस बात से वैल्यूएशन होती है, हाउ मच आर माई कंपनीज अर्निंग, इफ माई कंपनीज विल अर्न बेटर शेयर वैल्यूएशन विल बी हाई. एक और बात समझना है क्यों FPI आउटफ्लो हुआ. A lot of money was going towards investment in artificial intelligence, and India did not have an artificial intelligence story till very late. अब थोड़ा बहुत शुरू हुआ है इंडिया में artificial intelligence की story. So again, that should help in getting some FPI into India. But if you look at it, yesterday I was teaching you that 80% of investment, 75% of fresh investment even in US market is in artificial intelligence sector, and India did not have an AI story. That was also a factor that FPI was flowing out. Now, when we see this, the domestic institutional investors now own more. अगर आप ये देखेंगे, the domestic institutional investors own more than the ownership of the FIIs, which is a very new thing in India. तुम इस ग्राफ को देखो, FIIs have continuously owned more than domestic institutional investors. So that's a new thing that we see happening in India. And the share of mutual fund ownership is rising as a trajectory. So we see that domestic institutional investors and mutual funds are holding more and more bonds and financial assets in India now compared to the FPI. इसकी एक अच्छी बात भी है. Our dependence on FPI and fluctuation because of FPI will also be reduced. But again, the valuation should depend on performance of the companies, not on obligations to purchase, etc. Then of course survey talks about gift city. इसके बारे में मैं आपको पिछले सर्वे में भी पढ़ा चुका हूँ, तो आप उम्मीद है आप वहाँ देख चुके हैं उसे. अगर नहीं तो आप एक बार पिछले सर्वे में सर्च करके फाइनेंशियल मार्केट के ही टॉपिक में गिफ्ट सिटी देख लीजिएगा. गिफ्ट सिटी इज गुजरात इंटरनेशनल फाइनेंशियल टेक्नोलॉजी सिटी, which is established as the new financial center of India, and it is growing up very quickly on the as a financial center ladder. It's coming as a second to Mumbai now as an important ladder. Lot of new developments have happened over there, and we see foreign colleges being opened over there, universities rather being opened over there. We see that a lot of FPI is pouring in over there, foreign bank branches are being opened over there. So survey highlights just a couple of things there. एक तो there is a unified regulator in Gift City, which results in better oversight and which results in easier idea of investment. और उन्होंने कुछ achievements बताई, जैसे more than 1000 entities registered. It's ranked 43rd in the global financial index, up 9 places in 1 year only, and the fintech ranking is improved by 10 places in Gift City. अब मैंने ये लिस्ट तुम्हें दिया है, इसको एक बार रीड जरूर कर लेना प्रीलिम्स के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से कि क्या क्या ऑपरेशंस हो रहे हैं गिफ्ट सिटी में. तो बैंकिंग एंड क्रेडिट ऑपरेशन में क्या हुआ है, देयर आर 38 इंटरनेशनल फाइनेंशियल सर्विस सेंटर बैंकिंग यूनिट्स विद $100 billion plus assets in Gift City now. Capital markets में क्या है, monthly turnover has now gone up to $88 billion and cumulative derivatives trade at around $1351 billion. That's a big huge market you are looking at. तीसरा क्या है, फाइनेंशियल सर्विसेज दे रहे हैं, एयरक्राफ्ट की लीजिंग हो रही है, शिप की लीजिंग हो रही है, और यहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट ने मर्चेंटिंग भी इज अलाउ कर दिया है. मर्चेंटिंग इज अलाउड, दैट इज यू कैन टेक commission and you can shift commodities from one country to another even if that ship is not touching Indian shores. So merchanting is allowed. Of course, bullion trading, gold and silver trading at a very fast level, and 194 fund management entities with 310 schemes with 26 billion plus US dollar being managed. So this is a financial operations and the scale at which Gift City is rising. Of course, in 2025, there were two very important milestones, three rather. One is Sri Lanka's DFC Bank has listed at Gift City with green bonds. on NSE International Exchange. This is the first foreign corporate listing at Gift City. Prelims के point of view से याद रखोगे DFC CC Bank with Lankan rupee 2.5 billion, green bonds, first foreign corporate listing at Gift IFSC, and the launch of foreign currency settlement system now, which means real-time local settlement of foreign currency transactions between IFSC banking units, which will encourage more and more banking investors to come to India. And as I was telling you, 2 Australian universities have set up branch campuses at Gift IFSC, offering courses in business analytics, cybersecurity, fintech, etc. And 2 UK universities have also received, in principle, approvals. So these are things that have happened in 2025. You can add it in your current affairs as achievements in Gift City. Then survey comes to pension sector, and with rising aged population of India, they say that by 2036, around 15% population of India will be in the pension group. So we need to focus more on a pension, or pension fund regulatory and development authority is the regulatory body there. तो एक तो NPS का सिस्टम है, नेशनल पेंशन सिस्टम, विच इज मार्केट लिंक्ड, कवरिंग गवर्नमेंट, प्राइवेट सेक्टर, अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर एंड माइनर्स किस में आते हैं? NPS वात्सल्य. उसके अलावा तो इसके अंदर अब 211 लाख सब्सक्राइबर्स हैं. Asset under management 16.1 lakh crore है. So NPS is a dominant theme in India with respect to pension management. And between last 10 years, it has grown at more than 9% for subscribers and more than 37% for asset under management. Means people are contributing a lot of money for their future pension things under NPS. अटल पेंशन योजना एक और स्कीम है. इसमें गारंटीड मिनिमम पेंशन है फॉर लो इनकम वर्कर्स. इनके जो compounded annual growth rate है is 43% for subscribers. It is mainly for unorganized sector labor, lesser level of people, and asset under management is for at 64%. And then unified pension scheme launched in January 25 for central government employees, which blends both NPS and OPS. I will be teaching you unified pension scheme, as I told you, on our app in a separate session. And then there are other schemes like EPF and so on. Now, what are the challenges? पहला, अभी भी बहुत सारे लोग नहीं हैं. Coverage remains modest relative to workforce size. India's workforce size is 60 crore, but people covering themselves directly in pension funds in India is not even 10 crore, which means not even 1/6 of working population is fully covered with a pension fund. Why? With informal jobs, irregular incomes, it becomes very difficult to do long-term contributions. And pension assets remain very low in India, hardly 15 to 20% of GDP, compared to developed economies where it is 60 to 100%. And again, there is EPFO, PFRDA, state insurance pension bodies. So too many people, resulting in diversion, disintegration, and discouraging people from going for a unified pension system. So what should we do? Simplify the digital onboarding, Aadhaar-based, ENPS, फ्लेक्सिबल माइक्रो कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन मॉडल्स फॉर गिग एंड इनफॉर्मल वर्कर्स. जरूरी नहीं हर साल मिनिमम इतना देना ही है. जिस साल ज्यादा पैसे आए थोड़ा ज्यादा दे दो, कम पैसे आए कम दे दो. सो फ्लेक्सिबल मॉडल ऑफ पेमेंट विल मीन लेस मनी इन द ईयर you earn less, more money in the year you earn more, and that will keep people interested and encouraged. And then there should be interoperability. I should shift from NPS to APY, APY to NPS. I should shift from NPS to UPS. Whatever I choose, I could shift to that. Will encourage more and more people to enter, because they will know, okay, wherever more profit is earned, I can shift that side. And of course, we will need more actuarial frameworks. Unfortunately, actuaries as a field of study has also not picked up very well in India till now. It needed for both pension and insurance. So we need to make sure, because pension or insurance की क्या importance है समझो. Long-term funding is based on pension and insurance funds. If pension funds are going good, you get funding for 30 years, 35 years. Insurance funds are going good, you get funding for 30 years, 35 years. And these funds can be used for infrastructure development of the country, housing market development of the country, because these things need long-term funding. Then of course they go to insurance sector, and they say that we have a vision that there should be insurance for all by 2047. So there is huge premium income received by India. Life insurance accounts for 91% of asset under management and 75% of premium income. Non-life insurance, it is health insurance that has overtaken motor insurance now. But again, there is a point here. We still don't insure ourselves beyond life insurance much, and insurance penetration of India is still low. Insurance penetration का मतलब होता है total insurance premium paid divided by total GDP of the country. So insurance penetration of India is still very low. We are not even touching 4%, which is something we should be worried about. Now, there is more accessibility and there are more distribution networks being established, but non-life insurance is also growing in India, but the pace of growth is much lesser compared to what we would have liked. Now, some things have been done by the government, like GST exemption on life and individual health policies, ताकि अफोर्डेबिलिटी बढ़े. देन प्रधानमंत्री जीवन ज्योति बीमा योजना, ये अपने क्लास नोट्स में ऐड कर लेना. इसमें 26.32 करोड़ एनरोलमेंट्स हैं, 10 लाख क्लेम्स पेड, ये ऐड कर लोगे एज डेटा पॉइंट इन द क्लास नोट्स ऑन पीएम जीवन ज्योति बीमा योजना, जो मैं आपको पढ़ा रहा था फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन के साथ. प्रधानमंत्री सुरक्षा बीमा योजना, 56 करोड़ एनरोलमेंट, 1.73 लाख क्लेम्स पेड, इसे भी क्लास नोट्स में ऐड कर लेना. देन सबका बीमा सबकी रक्षा, दिस इज एन अमेंडमेंट ऑफ इंश्योरेंस एक्ट विच प्लान्स दैट make it easy to do business and promote insurance for all. An FDI limit has been increased by government to 100% now to attract capital as well as good technology in insurance. Ease of doing business बढ़ाने के लिए स्टेप लिए गए हैं. आप समझिएगा, ये जो बातें आप पढ़ रहे हैं, it is about steps taken by government to promote insurance development in India. Steps taken by government to promote insurance development in India. This slide and this slide. So what has been done for ease of doing business? One-time registration for insurance intermediaries. So one-time registration. So that gives flexibility. आप एक बार रजिस्ट्रेशन कर लीजिए एज एन इंश्योरेंस इंटरमीडियरी, फिर आप LIC की इंटरमीडिएशन करिए या HDFC अर्गो की. आपको ये नहीं होगा कि आपको बार बार खुद को रजिस्टर करना होगा. All right. Then, of course, IRDAI approved threshold for share transfers has been raised from 1% to 5%. This is again good that now there's a larger threshold to share the transfers, which will mean that, share transfers to be raised, which will mean that more funds can be raised by the companies without having too much of paperwork to be done. And net owned fund requirements for foreign insurers has been reduced from 5,000 crore to 1,000 crore. कि कितना अपना पैसा लेकर आना है वो कम कर दिया गया ताकि ज्यादा लोग encourage हों, to encourage more people to come and invest. Then another step taken is policyholder protection, that is creating an education and protection fund for policyholders. IRDAI empowered with disgorgement powers. So IRDAI doesn't have to seek further permission now, they can disgorge without seeking further permissions. Maximum penalty for non-compliance increased from 1 crore to 10 crore, extended to intermediaries. अगर किसी ने इंश्योरेंस का प्रॉमिस किया और नहीं पूरा किए तो नॉन कंप्लायंस की पेनल्टी बढ़ाई जाएगी और उसमें अब एजेंट्स भी इंक्लूडेड होंगे, सो दैट फॉल्स प्रॉमिसेस एंड नेगेटिव सेल कैन बी स्टॉप्ड. And then there is data protection by giving a legal backing through Digital Personal Data Protection Act. What are the challenges? As I told you, the insurance penetration has now been even below 4%, and that is something that we should be worried about. Insurance density has increased to $97. Last year it was $93. Insurance penetration last year was 3.9%. Now it is 3.7%. So penetration has gone down, density has increased. Penetration क्या होता है? Total amount of insurance premium paid divided by total GDP into 100. Density क्या होती है? Total amount of insurance premium paid divided by total population. Alright, that is why it is in dollar per person terms. Also, the acquisition and distribution costs are high, which means that uninsured missing middle is very very high. That companies are unable to expand into medium scale system, which is still uninsured, but the agency costs are so high that they are unable to do that. Agency cost means paying the intermediaries, setting up the office, meeting the formalities, and that is discouraging insurance development in India. So these are the challenges for it. What should be done? Reduce the distribution cost through digitization, जैसा म्यूचुअल फंड में किया हमने, शेयर्स में किया, ब्रोकरहुड कम कर दिए. Improve affordability, make insurance premium cheaper, make people more used to taking insurance, and widen the risk pool, as in mix things. 10 लोग मिलकर इंश्योरेंस ले सकें. मान लीजिए हाउसिंग सोसाइटी है, पूरी हाउसिंग सोसाइटी अपने अपने रेजिडेंट्स के लिए अलग अलग इंश्योरेंस लेने जाएगी, ज़्यादा कॉस्टली होगा. लेकिन 200 लोग एक साथ रह रहे हैं, सब ने मिलकर कंबाइंड इंश्योरेंस ले लिया, कम खर्चा लगेगा, and that will encourage more people to take insurance. So in conclusion, survey says that There is global uncertainty, technological change, but India has strengthened its financial regulation. It has shifted to proactive and consultative regulation. SEBI has modernized governance. IRDAI has adopted principle-based regulation. PFRDA has expanded its pension inclusion with e-Shramik for gig workers and FPO MSMEs. So India has been working towards improving it. We are going a little bit for international validation. We see that the financial sector assessment program by IMF and World Bank has found India's financial system very resilient and diversified, and financial sector assets now reached 187% of GDP. Now this is what we should get worried about. This is over financialization. In a relatively less rich country like India, we are a middle income country, अगर हमारा financial asset 187% of GDP हो रहा है, मतलब the ratio between real asset and nominal valuation of capital is now reaching almost 1:2. So tomorrow, God forbid, if there is any challenge in the financial market, how do we pay back the people who are holding these financial assets? And that will be a serious challenge India will have to face. So we should be conscious. We can go for financialization, but people should be informed. There should not be only short-term discourse. People should be looking for long-term ideas of investment. Insurance and pension should be promoted, but taking short-term gains through equity and so on should be discouraged. Then, of course, government has given a theme of finance for Viksit Bharat. So in that case, it is about not only viewing finance as funding, but about mobilizing it through all sections of population, allocating it for best efficient use, and sustaining it over a long period of time. So, if we do things simpler, service-oriented taxation, time-bound dispute resolution, decriminalization of minor technical offenses, and transparent proportionate administrative processes. This is one thing practiced by government, certainty and predictability. So steps taken to make finance more inclusive. Then recasting financial regulation, which we have already discussed, in making sure there is, single window, making sure all kind of financial entities are looked into with the same kind of prism, and also bringing convergence in financial intermediation, and also from entity based to activity based supervision. Entity based क्या है कि आप इंश्योरेंस कंपनी हैं या आप म्यूचुअल फंड कंपनी हैं या आप बैंक हैं. एक्टिविटी बेस्ड क्या है? क्या आप डिपॉजिट ले रहे हैं, क्या आप इंश्योरेंस दे रहे हैं, क्या आपने बॉन्ड्स इशू किया है. तो जो सुपरविजन होना चाहिए, it should be based on what activity I am doing, not on the basis of which sector of the financial system I belong to, so that it is easy to regulate the activity, because ultimately it's the activity which will have impact on people. All right. And then towards proportionality, that you should have a risk calibrated oversight. Don't take over risk and don't become too defensive. That will happen when we inform our people better, when we give them enough capacity to do research on particular events, when we create possible safety valves so that people suddenly don't lose money, and so on. All right, so that is why they say that if there is better interagency cooperation, we will be able to prevent arbitrage better. Then deepen long-term finance, that is corporate bond market should be allowed to grow better. And as I told you, these are the methods by which corporate bond market can go better. टैक्स ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ डेट को रैशनलाइज कीजिए. अब वो डेट है तो उसके टैक्स उस पर कम लगा, इसको कैपिटल गेन्स मत मानिए. सिमिलरली क्रेडिट एनहांसमेंट फॉर मिड रेटेड इशूअर्स, एनकरेज द मिड रेटेड इशूअर्स टू गेट easier loans through bond market. Standardize the securitization frameworks, whether the bonds are issued by big players, small players, government, private, there should be one standard method, rate of discussion, yield rate decision, rather than multiple things for multiple players. Similarly, municipal bond capacity to be made stronger. When I'll teach you budget very soon, I will be bringing this up. In this year's budget, they have taken steps to promote municipal bond development in India so that municipal corporations can also raise money through the bond market. Greater participation by pension and insurance funds, and faster insolvency resolution. How do you diversify the ecosystem? By bringing mix of banks, NBFCs, bond issuers, corporate lenders, and so on. This will help in, अगर हम ऐसा कर सकें, डाइवर्सिफाई कर पाए, तो सिस्टमिक रिस्क कम होगा. क्यों? अगर बैंक के मार्केट में दिक्कत आई तो एनबीएफसीज प्रोटेक्ट कर सकते हैं, अगर रियल एस्टेट के मार्केट में दिक्कत आई तो बैंक्स थोड़ा सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं. सो अ डाइवर्सिफाइड मार्केट reduces the systemic risk. One part of the system in trouble, the other part can cover up. Reduces capital costs because then there will be diversified risk sharing, portfolios will be diversified, so capital costs will become that much lesser. It will improve capital allocation. Whichever sector gives you higher return, capital can flow towards it because they are all integrated. And support infrastructure, climate finance, and manufacturing growth. Why? Because now financing will be available at each level, from short term to medium term to long term. So people can program themselves कि अच्छा भाई मान लीजिए मुझे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलप करना है, तो मैं बॉन्ड इशू करूंगा 20 साल का. उसमें कौन पैसा लगाएगा? पेंशन फंड. अगर मुझे हाउसिंग डेवलप करना है तो मैं बॉन्ड इशू करूंगा 10 ईयर्स का. उसमें कौन पैसा लगाएंगे? इंश्योरेंस कंपनी. अगर मुझे इमीडिएटली एक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट बनानी है फॉर टॉयज, तो मैं बॉन्ड इशू करूंगा 5 ईयर्स का, या फाइनेंस डिवेंचर्स इशू करूंगा 5 ईयर्स का, और वहां बैंक्स पैसे लगा सकते हैं. सो देयर विल बी डाइवर्सिफिकेशन लीडिंग टू better quality funding for all. So the basic idea is create good regulation, diversify the market, give easier laws to people, promote single window for people in finance, make finance resilient, inclusive, and efficient. That is the basic thing. Thank you all for supporting me throughout. I love you all. Hope to see you very soon with the next chapter. Thank you. Bye bye. God bless you all.